people have entered the waiting. 6 people have entered the waiting room. Oh my God. I'll just let them all on because. Oh man.
Good morning, Anne. Oh, you're muted. Good morning, Morgan and Kathy. How are you all?
Okay, so I'm muted too, right?
No, not anymore.
Okay. This is, boy, I was getting a little bit creeped out here. Because it can't admit. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to get some people in here.
Oh, I see our speaker just arrived.
Yes. Hi, Bob.
Hey, long time no see.
Hi there.
Okay, Bob, I have to tell you, last night I was going over Robert Reich's comments on the bill that just passed the House.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like a quarter inch from slashing my wrists. It's ridiculous. It's horrible. It's horrible. And I'm so glad that you're with us today to add to our depression and anxiety.
Hopefully not all that. Am I going first? I saw a message that somebody wanted to switch times with me.
Oh, not
But
that I know of,
But
but
the other speaker wanted to go first, but I'm fine with whatever.
oh, well, I had her on the run of show going first.
Oh, okay. Oh, so I'm just holding off then, right?
Yeah, if that's all right.
Okay, good. Give me time to get my PowerPoint up. So
Okay.
it's not all that depressing. I mean, you know.
What? Are you crazy? Or immune
Well,
or what?
one of the points I'm going to make is I think we need a little bit more ridicule and less outrage.
Good.
And I think
That's a great way to
the
cover
point.
it today.
And
Yeah.
I was going to say this there, but I mean, just little things like, you know, Donald Trump's going to change another geographic feature on the map. Did you know that?
Oh, you mean the Gulf?
Yeah, you know, he changed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Well, he's going to change the San Andreas Fault to the Biden Fault.
By the way,
I think he's already done that.
small point. Robert Reich prefers to be called Reich, not Reich.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Thanks.
right.
Yeah.
Reich has a bad connotation. By the way,
Yeah, I assume that's his reason. Yeah.
he's one of the, I think the brilliant commentators. I listen to him all the time.
Yes,
He
I
was
do.
Me too. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and
he was a colleague at Berkeley, so
yeah, and he gives good information for people to use, I think.
Yeah.
So look, what's late night TV going to be without Donald Trump? I mean, let's look at the positive here.
Oh, too late. Excuse me a second, Janie. Did you put the link out to everyone on our little text thread? I
No,
know
I can do that right now.
Yeah, Joanne was looking for a link, and I think Patty Sofa was too. So
By the way, do you have any plans to go back to an actual luncheon format?
Well,
We would love that. I would love that.
We
There's
would all
someone.
love that, but it has proven to be financially difficult, locationally difficult.
oh, yeah. Yep.
There are a lot of reasons why it's difficult.
Yeah, no, I get it. No, it just Zoom has its practicalities. It's just, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
you miss interact. I much prefer to speak to a group in person.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
This.
We would prefer that too.
Yeah, well, by the way, I've got a PowerPoint here. I just do the screen sharing thing, I think, right? We've got that ready to go.
Yeah, I've got you set up as co-host so you can share screen.
Okay. Well, just tell me when. I'll wait because again, you're gonna have the other speaker first, right?
Susie, do you have me down as an intaker type of thing here?
You mean, did I make you a co-host?
Yeah,
Yes, I did.
I don't see it. That's why I'm going. I don't know whether it's my computer or
Oh,
just me.
when somebody enters, you'll see them pop up, the name pop up on the.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're under
I saw
GN
that.
Sparkle K.
Yeah,
Sparkle K.
How did that happen?
You should be at the top of your list.
Oh, well,
If you click on participants.
yeah, see, I'm not seeing that here.
I'm gonna have to have a tech session with Susie because my name is misspelled. I must have been, I don't know, asleep when I wrote my name one time because it's saved incorrectly. I have to change it every time.
Oh.
how is it spelled, Janie?
With a VK instead of CK.
Ah, well, you know, the V is right next to.
I know.
Oh, geez.
I have a good reason.
Okay, I'm gonna have to come back in. Okay. This is making me
I can
nuts.
rename you. I can rename you, Nan, if you want. If that's
Oh,
your
no.
only.
No, I'm back in. It's just, I think I'm having computer. No, it's probably me. Who am I kidding?
Mm,
Okay,
mm.
I'm ready. Just waiting for people. Yeah. We have some people that I
Oh,
added on lately because they called and said they hadn't gotten the where they can get in.
ouch.
Oh, really? The link? Really?
Yeah, the links and I'm going, okay, so we didn't
Whatever
have a
they-
lot,
Yeah.
but more than we usually do, but
Do
but we're having a lot of more people coming back.
Do you
People-
suppose some people were confused by the 11:30 start instead of the 12 o'clock?
Ooh, I didn't even think about that.
Where does it?
I
Where
was a
does it
little
say-
confused by that. I got on at 11:36 thinking I was getting on early, and then I realized, ooh, the thing says 11:30. So
Yeah.
Where did
Well,
it
you
say
know, when I
11:30?
create the Zoom, I always put 11:30 on because that's when we kind of start and get things
Oh,
going, but the
okay.
official program starts at noon. I don't know how to get
Oh,
around
okay.
that.
Yeah,
Oh,
then
okay.
it's good. Then I
yeah.
wasn't late. I'm early.
No, you're.
Ta-da.
Well, I set my alarm and put my phone in my pocket so that I would be on time.
Oh, I bet that felt good.
Well, I think you just said, that the program starts at noon and you can check in starting 11:30.
Yeah,
Sometimes people like to chat,
Yeah.
while we wait for it to start, so,
that's right.
but you don't have to.
On the announcement that went out, though, if we look at it, it says noon to 1:30 on the announcement.
Well, that's all right. We're happy to see people early. Bob, I have to tell you that my Kiwanis Club of Tempe is giving we give scholarships every year.
Oh, my
to
nephew.
Tempe High School students, and Benedict got a scholarship last year from us, and he was qualified to reapply this year. He's an amazing student, absolutely. And
He's a good
he's your
kid.
nephew. I thought that was great.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know this, but those boys' dad died. My brother was killed
That's
2
what you
years
told
ago.
Oh,
me. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
He was
sorry.
killed on the intersection of Alameda and College early in
Oh,
the morning. He was riding his bike and
Oh, no.
yeah, and ended up under the wheel of a Ford F-150 truck coming
oh my God.
westbound. Yeah,
And that
so-
was Benedict's senior year, right?
yeah, mhm,
Yeah, that's horrible for a
right.
teenage boy. I mean,
Yeah.
and
He's got-
he just,
Mm.
I mean, he's amazing. He's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
Good kid, yeah. He's
Yeah.
got his older brother was at Notre Dame already. And he's
Ah,
got 2 younger brothers that I think in some ways are even more talented than him. So yeah, they're good kids.
wow.
I have them for taco night every like about 3 Saturdays a month at my house, which there's a secret to being very popular and feeding boys well because they think I'm the best cook in the world. The secret is just have a lot of food there and let them play with it.
It's the hollow leg syndrome.
They think I'm the best cook ever.
From age 12 on, it doesn't
Right.
matter what it is, right?
But they all get to make their own tacos.
Oh,
Pizza
that's
night,
fun.
I have a pizza oven, so they all can make their own pizzas or whatever, so they can play with
Oh,
their
that's
food and just have a lot of
wonderful.
it. Yeah.
Wow. I
Yeah.
had a
So,
friend who had a pizza oven, and it was just wonderful.
hey, you want a
Mhm.
way to be popular with your nephews and your sons? Get a pizza.
Good point.
Mm,
Except it's getting hot
yum.
now. I don't put on the fire for that. So, yeah. By the
Well,
way,
that's
did you?
what we can do. We can have Blue Tuesday Forum at your house, and then you can make pizza for
That'd be
everybody.
great. Fine. By the way, this guy, walked in a bar and he was going to tell an anti-Trump joke. And the bartender said, he said, "Well, before you tell that joke, I just want you to know that the bouncer's MAGA, I'm MAGA, the waiter's MAGA, and the driver of the car's MAGA, and the owner's MAGA." And the guy thought there and said, "Okay, well, you're right. I'm not going to tell the joke because I don't want to have to explain it 5 times."
Oh, oh, yeah. That's,
That's great.
that's good.
Good one.
Nice answer too. Have to remember that.
Ah.
So,
Ah, yes, we need humor.
so
Ah,
but I find it, look, this not, I'll be touch on this. I'm actually in some ways more hopeful. I tend to be a little more optimistic person anyway, but the backlash of this stuff is pretty clear. And I'm finding allies. We have a lot of affinity with normal Republicans. I mean, these are normal people, and I'm looking very forward to the midterms, which changes.
If we
the
have a
dynamic.
midterm, if
Well,
we have a midterm, that's
I
going to
think so.
depend on how the vote goes in the Senate.
Mhm.
oh,
We'll just see. Look, I mean, there's real cause for concerns. There's no doubt about that. But I'm also quite hopeful about this outcome. I
Mhm.
think they have way overread their. First of all, I don't think they had a quote mandate any more than
Oh
anybody
my
elected
God,
does.
no.
And one of the things I push back on, and again, I'm not talking now about stuff I don't already have. I'm tired of this argument that Donald Trump, this is what the majority of Americans voted for.
Mm.
Well,
He
first of all,
got 49%.
exactly 49.3
So,
to 49.2%. Kamala got
Mhm.
48.7. There's
Mhm.
only 1.5 million votes between the two in a country of what, 335 million. So it's a misread of that. And I don't think all these folks signed up for this bullshit.
Mm-mm.
I mean, they signed up because of a whole range of different reasons. They had this fiction that their economic life would be better under him. I also think we made real mistakes during that election. And I think our biggest mistake was assuming that reproductive freedom and the woman's vote was going to win that for us.
Right.
I think and Arizona has been the perfect example. The voters in Arizona voted for that constitutional amendment to the state constitution and then turned around and also voted for Trump. So
Mhm.
we misread that and we took the wrong shot, and there was real mistakes made. And Kamala Harris was not the attractive candidate that we thought she was to many
We-
people.
Well,
Yeah.
also the biggest block was eligible people who didn't vote.
True.
Mhm.
But why aren't they voting?
Yeah.
I mean, the analysis of Trump's coalition
Mhm.
it looks very much like Barack Obama's coalition.
Mhm.
So it's just when you break down that data, men cut for Donald Trump.
Mhm.
I'm not sure they would today. And again, you know, what's going to happen this Christmas when there's nothing on the shelves at Walmart?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I really think, and this is the end result of this, the ugliness of the immigration positions is just getting people, you know, they don't want you to deport my gardener.
Exactly. Well, really.
And by the way, that was another side. We have not been pushing back on false narratives. This narrative that there was an open border, that
I know.
Biden
We
let
never
in-
do. That's the
No,
problem. We
there is no
never
such thing.
do. I
And we
know.
don't push back. We need
We
to
were
push
up
back
ag-
on the narratives.
Yeah, we were up against a barrage of propaganda and lies.
Right.
And
And yeah,
Interestingly, when people are asked about the border, they still favor the Republicans, but if they're asked about immigration, they favor the Democrats.
well, there you go. And you got to just call people out. Again, what I'm saying now in the conversation is not what I have in my talk, because I don't want to double up. You know, some of these people are just so despicable. I think it's not fair to criticize the way people look, but
Mhm.
if you look like, you know, Stephen Miller, like the grandson of Joseph Goebbels, don't run around saying fascist shit all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's
Okay.
what he believes. So
Well, but he's just, I mean, he is just crazy terrible. And and a lot of these too, I mean, part of this, it drives me crazy because, you know, I kind of understand how the sausage is made, but these statements, you would not pass a law school exam if you made some of the
Mhm.
answers they make about the Constitution.
Mhm.
You'd flunk. And frankly, Christine Noem, who says that habeas corpus is to allow, you know, Donald Trump to deport people, she wouldn't pass a high school civics exam with that.
Mm-mm. Yep.
So, I mean, even if you gave her a, you know, college civics exam, but I mean, you know, a high school AP course in government, you'd fail right then.
I
So
think
it's
it was
just,
Adrian Fontes that came out with a statement. When they go low, step on their necks.
yeah, I think that's great. I mean, we all love the speech from Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high and stuff.
Yeah.
I agree with Adrian. Adrian's a personal friend of mine. And yeah, let's just go ahead and step on the necks.
Yeah. So following on what you were saying before, the
Uh-huh.
RFK Jr. couldn't pass a Berkeley prelim either.
Mm.
And I'm sorry, by the way, I've come to really despise him because he is such a betrayal of the legacy of his father and his family.
And his own
Oh.
legacy as an environmental lawyer, right? I mean,
Right, his own legacy too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's weird. He does. I actually agree with him when he says about dyes and using food stamps to buy sodas. I think that's a great initiative. That's fine. But then he wants to go into this kooky anti-vax stuff,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
then is fawning over Donald Trump.
and what
Mm.
strikes me in particular, I guess, is all of the cuts at NIH and NSF, and you know, a bunch of my so I was at Berkeley, and then a bunch of my grad students were international students, and they stayed
Yeah.
Mhm.
and did great things. One is a VP at DeepMind now, and you know, we benefit so much from all these people, and they're destroying that whole.
Oh, I know.
They are.
Well, I spent a year in El Salvador administering a USAID, USAID project.
Hmm.
And I got to tell you, there was no waste and fraud there. Every dime
Right.
was accounted for. And everything that the program bought was American goods. It's actually, you think it's all foreign aid. Well, it's an American job program too. I mean, you send us a tractor to Zimbabwe, it comes from an American manufacturer.
Right,
the
yeah,
cars we
I mean,
used
this
in the
has real
program
trickle
were all
down.
American made.
Mhm.
So the people that we had to hire to bring down to give trainings were all US citizens and came down from the United States. So it was a great kind of jobs program for America.
We'll talk about the brain drain. Now, the European, Chinese, Japanese, research universities are offering great deals to people in our Ivy League and Berkeley.
Sure.
Yeah. We're gonna lose that.
Mhm. Yeah. So, hey, Donald, did you ever read The Manchurian Candidate? Oh, I guess you can't read.
Ouch.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, by the way, and what's this thing like, oh, what's happened to Putin? And because, Putin keeps bombing Ukraine, well, like, pull your head out, Donald. Nothing's happened to Putin. That's the way Putin's been all along.
Yeah.
What's the big shock to any of us? So,
That's true.
Donald Trump has a revelation. Ooh.
Yeah, Tim Stringham is pointing people to Idiocracy as a if you've ever seen that movie as
I saw that movie. Well, we'll see. I'm hopeful for other things that the backlash to this. I also think that there's going to be a lot of people in this White House that are going to be looking at criminal charges for things like insider trading, information. They're just running the thing like such impunity. And if I was their lawyer, I'd be telling them, don't do that. I'll give, Donald Trump's pardon of the January 6th people, that case against him, the moment he's out of office, gets resurrected. And in criminal law, a subsequent action can reflect on a person's guilt. So the fact that he pardoned everybody else is a reflection of his own guilt. That can be used against him in a trial.
Can the classified documents one be resurrected, or is that gone?
I don't see why not. He wasn't in the White House at the time. There's no reason for it in his scope. That's the easiest case to make of all.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, he got convicted on the hardest case to make, which was the whole Stormy Daniels case. That was actually, I thought, the weakest case of all, and he still got convicted. Leading to that great statement that, your average undocumented alien has committed less crimes than Donald Trump. But it's just the strongest case was the documents. And again, this is where you get this, we go high stuff. Merrick Garland was into this whole deliberative process, Jack Smith, this whole deliberative process. No, bring him to trial within the first year or two. There was no reason that could not have happened, but they had to be so careful, not believing that he would come back to office again and shut them all down. So I also think those are bases for articles of impeachment alone. And frankly, there are things in the original Mueller report that could still be subject to prosecution. Mueller didn't do it because he said you can't charge a sitting president because of the structure of the government. But so he could be facing all kinds of things at that point.
God only knows.
By the way, I give a lot of television commentary. If anybody wants to be on my list, because I send those out after I do them, just send me an email and I can put you on my list, and then I send it out by email after that. Because I've been appearing a lot on, things like Bloomberg News and KCAL, ABC affiliate in California. And some of the ones in New York, which means I got to get up at 3 a.m. to do those. But yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So yeah. So if you'd like those, just send me an email and I'll get you on my lists.
Robert, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Wonderful. Jerome Landau here. Dave Tierney sends regards. We were with him the other night.
Oh.
Linda mentioned that we would be seeing you.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. Yeah. Good to see you, even
You too.
headless.
How are they doing?
He's doing well. He
Uh-huh.
went through a little bit of surgery, minor,
Uh-huh.
and back on his feet, smiling and talking a
Very
lot.
good. Good for him.
Then hi.
Good.
Let me just get into here. There we go. With my new beard. Every couple of years, I just let it go. And Bob, we have been promising Linda, you and me a meal sometime, so maybe we should finally, after all of these years, take ourselves up on it.
Good. I put my email address in the chat.
Ah,
So if you want to do, just take that down, shoot me an email and we'll arrange it, or I can give you a call or whatever.
absolutely. Yes.
Good. Love to.
Is this a new email address?
No, that's the same old one.
Okay. Shame on us for not doing it. Oh,
Ah, no, let's get together. That'd be great.
okay.
All right, this is Janie. I am going to begin. Welcome, everyone. And we are delighted to have you. Whoops, let's see if I can. All right. We respectfully acknowledge that statewide we are on the ancestral homelands of the indigenous nations that have inhabited these lands since time immemorial, including the Akchin, Akamela Odom, Apache, Colorado River, Fort Mojave, Gila River, Havasupai, Hopi, Wallapai, Navajo, Paiute, Pima, Piposh, Quechan, Yaqui, and Yavapai peoples. Their traditional care and honoring of these lands allow us to be here today. Today we have two fantastic speakers, and if you were privileged to sign on before noon, then you were a part of a great conversation with Bob McWhirter. Ellie Pérez-Pawloski is going to be telling us about what's happening with education. Join us June 25th at noon for Blue Tuesday. We have often promoted armchair activism. What I'm going to tell you today is it's not enough. You have to be there physically. And there's so many places that you can check to see what's going on. The indivisible groups, lots of different groups are having activities all the time. Bodies make
is
a
Mommy.
difference. I just want to start off this depressing information with the GOP, and I call it the big, bad, ugly bill. It just passed the House. Mark Kelly sent out a letter to all of his constituents, which is the state of Arizona, saying that he will vote against it. He has absolutely nothing to do with this bill. It's horrible. So we need to keep, you can thank Mark Kelly. Please make sure that Ruben Gallego gets your emails. There are two primary facets of this bill that I wanted to just briefly cover with you today. The US deficit in 2024, that's last year, was 1.8 trillion or 6.4% of America's GDP. The GOP bad ugly bill doesn't just add an estimated 5.3 trillion to the debt. It takes health coverage and nutritional support from poor people to very partially, a tiny bit, offset the big tax cuts for the wealthy and corporate welfare bailouts. The courts have one power to make their orders stick. They can hold federal officials in contempt and enforce contempt citations against them. That is today. After this bill, there's a provision in there that would, enforcing a contempt citation as it exists now means fining or jailing the Trump lawyers who argue before them and possibly invoking contempt all the way up the line to Trump, but not if the big ugly bill is enacted with this hidden provision. It says that no federal court may enforce a contempt citation. That provision would eliminate any restraint on Trump or his administration. Trump will have crowned himself king, and no Congress and no court, the other two branches of government, could stop him. So on that hearty note, if you've thought about doing something, about showing up somewhere and you haven't, you've talked yourself out of it, watch this for just a couple of minutes.
But we're all on my health insurance. I was going to be brave, but I have a mortgage. I was going to be brave, but have you seen what college costs now? I was going to be brave, but my stock options haven't vested yet. I was going to be brave, but our cancer research depends on federal funding. I was going to be brave, but I think I should wait until my platform is bigger. I was going to be brave, and then I got a book deal. I was going to be brave, but I believe I signed an NDA. I was going to be brave, but I've spent so long building up this life. I was going to be brave, but I don't want all the negativity. I was going to be brave, but I'm not sure I'm the right person to speak up. I was going to be brave, but I'm really in a place of taking care of myself right now. I was going to be brave, but then I thought of alienating my friends. I was going to be brave, but what will people say? I was going to be brave, but it won't be worth it if I never get invited back. I was going to be brave, but I don't like feeling like a Johnny One Note or a Debbie Downer. I was going to be brave, but I don't always want to be that person. I was going to be brave, but I don't want to make everything about politics, you know? I was going to be brave, but I realized I could be more effective behind the scenes. I was going to be brave, but talk is cheap and strategy is what matters. I was going to be brave, but I thought we should have a meeting first. I was going to be brave, but then we decided to have a vote of the partners first. I was going to be brave, but our merger has not been approved yet. I was going to be brave, but we are looking to expand our audience. I was going to be brave, but after this fundraising round, I was going to be brave, but we're a tax-exempt organization. I was going to be brave, but I fear being smeared as an extremist. I was going to be brave, but I prefer to let the work speak for itself. I was going to be brave, but I tell stories. I'm not an activist. I was going to be brave, but so many people could be hurt if I said something. I was going to be brave, but maybe it'll all just work itself out. I was going to be brave, but the damage is still on a pretty small scale. I was going to be brave, but we've survived worse. I was going to be brave, but the system always self-corrects. I was going to be brave, but ultimately, I know it won't happen in America. I was going to be brave, but let's see how the courts rule, how the midterms go, how I was going to be brave, but maybe this will accelerate the collapse of the old ways and wake people up and bring in the new. I was going to be brave, but I'm not an expert. I was going to be brave, but I'm still listening and learning. I was going to be brave, but people like me shouldn't be out front. I was going to be brave, but I'm not perfect and don't want to be a hypocrite. I was going to be brave, but it's complicated. I was going to be brave, but everything shouldn't be reduced to good and evil. I was going to be brave, but I don't want to add to all the division. I was going to be brave, but what if they come after my family? I was going to be brave, but the timing has to be right. I was going to be brave, but I was going to be brave. I was going to be, I was going to.
I was going. I was.
There are a lot of reasons why we don't want to be out there. It's uncomfortable. Some of us have never done that before. Please check with, you can Google groups like Indivisible. You can check with your legislative districts, your congressional districts with the Maricopa County Democratic Party, the Arizona Democratic Party, and our forever standby. Go to CEBV, Civic Engagement Beyond Voting.us, and you'll find lots of opportunities.
Republican. All three appear on MSNBC. When you need even more positive energy, rewatch Cory Booker's passionate filibuster speech of his record-breaking 25 hours plus 5 minutes on YouTube. Let's all be resolute Democrats through all this noise. You all take very good care, and please, happy summer to each of you. Thank you. Janie? Yoo-hoo, Janie.
I'm sorry. Let me say again that Bob's talk is being recorded and we will share that recording link with you. Because it's not the first time that we're going to want to listen to it or that you can share it with your friends and neighbors. Robert McWhirter is a nationally and internationally known speaker and author on trial advocacy, immigration law, and the history of the Bill of Rights. Although he is a certified specialist in criminal law, Bob is a frequent guest on Arizona Horizon and KJZZ as a constitutional expert and historian. Bob has published extensively and has worked extensively in Latin America on justice reform, teaching law at the University of Chile, trial advocacy in Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, Nicaragua, Ecuador, Uruguay, and El Salvador, and training lawyers in Puebla, Mexico. In 2010-11, Bob served in El Salvador administering an $11 million U.S. aid project to reform the justice system, where he successfully developed and oversaw programs and trainings for the Salvadoran courts, police, and prosecutors. He's a distinguished alumni award recipient from the Barrett Honors College and Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. And since 2009 has been named a Southwest Super Lawyer. Bob, we are so delighted to have you here.
My pleasure. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, there we go. Okay, I think you should be able to see the screen, correct?
Yep.
Okay. You still seeing the main screen, or you seeing?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay, I want you just to see the screen with Donald Trump, not all the other junk, right?
That's right.
Okay. Well, this is a variation of the Constitution of Donald Trump. During his first term, I gave, I think, 12 different versions of the Constitution of Donald Trump speech at Changing Hands bookstore. I'm trying to get set to do that again. I could literally have you there for about 14 hours of programming if you wanted. Look, let's make the Constitution great again. Justice Brandeis, one of the greats of the Supreme Court, wrote, "The greatest menace to freedom is an inert people." Okay, we are not inert people. The point is to learn about the Constitution, and Donald Trump gives us this great opportunity to learn about the Constitution. So, hooray for Donald Trump on that one. Thucydides wrote, "Here in Athens, each individual is interested not only in his own affairs, but in the affairs of the state as well. Of all people, we alone do not say that a man who takes no interest in politics is a man who minds his own business, but we say that he is useless." The Greek word, our word idiot, comes from the Greek, idiotes, and what it meant was not a person who was dumb or stupid, but it's a person incapable of engaging in this public sphere. So those were idiots. Idiots, idiotes versus pelotes. The pelote is the public person. That's what we are expected to be. And look, the framers of our Constitution knew Thucydides very well. And I made this point before. We need to have a little bit less outrage and more ridicule. Donald Trump, if he hates one thing, he thrives on outrage. He hates ridicule, especially to him. That's just his weakness, is if you point him out. And look, there's great precedent for that. The great dictator, Charlie Chaplin's official talkie, was in 1940, it was all a spoof on Adolf Hitler. And don't forget, the producers, the movie, again, spoofing Adolf Hitler, the title song, "Springtime for Hitler." It's all a spoof, and I think that's important. By the way, this stuff about taking Canada, I really think we should annex Canada. I mean, just annex it, because I figure there's 13 Canadian provinces. That makes let's say 6 states, that's 12 Democratic senators we're going to have in the United States Senate. So I'm fine with annexing Canada. And while we're at it, why just take the canal? Let's just take all Panama, because that's 2 more Democratic senators. We then make Puerto Rico a state, the DC Circuit a state. So I figure that's 18 Democratic senators. You know, the Republicans will be out of power for 2 generations with that. So let's just go ahead and annex Canada. And any doubt, I mean, look, Canada is always pink on the maps anyway, so you know they're going to go Democrat. So look, let's just annex Canada. And by the way, if he wants to run for a 3rd time, that's great. Let's do it. We'll bring out Barack Obama and run him again for a 3rd term and see how that works out. Okay, you want to start messing with this stuff? Go ahead. Look, some of you were here before, the Gulf of America, you need to change that name. Sorry, I'm going to repeat the joke to those, but there are a few who weren't. Great, he wants to change another one. He wants to change the name of the San Andreas Fault to the Biden Fault. Okay, fine. We need to approach these things as happy warriors. Otherwise, it just drags us down. And there's a lot here to be happy about in terms of this is an important fight. This is the fight of our time. And it's a fight of basic democratic decency over forces that are just negative for everybody. We're going to win that fight. All right, so let's talk about some misconceptions. This is a huge pet peeve. The entire U.S. Constitution was written for Americans only, and it's not the world Constitution, it's the U.S. Constitution. Non-citizens and criminals do not possess rights under this document. Democrats know this, but they have to cheat with illegals to ever win another election. Okay, the internal logic there is just stunning. There has never been any indication of persons undocumented voting. I represent many people undocumented in different crimes and different situations. I can tell you the last thing they ever want to do is vote. Undocumented persons do not want to get on anybody's radar. They do not want to vote. The number of cases in 4 years, there's actual statutes, it's 18 U.S.C. 611, that penalizes an alien voting in a U.S. election. In 4 years of the Trump administration, when he was Trump 45, there wasn't one prosecution under that statute. Not one prosecution that I know of. So this idea that aliens are voting is just something out of people's mind. But look, the reaction to this is very important, because this is what America is truly about, what's against this. The Fifth Amendment to the Constitution says, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. The 14th Amendment says, nor shall any state deprive any person of life. It doesn't say any citizen. It says person. Now, this follows on the Constitution, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. It doesn't say that all citizens are created equal. Now, for that concept, you can go back to ancient Rome. Ancient Romans gave great rights to citizen. Being a Roman citizen was important, but our framers specifically reacted to that. It's all people are created equal, not all citizens. Human rights are not alien. Aliens cannot be alienated. And this all goes back to John Locke. I mean, if you want to understand the political philosophy of the U.S. Constitution, it's John Locke's 2 treatises on government, which Thomas Jefferson basically ripped off a lot of that when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. The United States Constitution begins with the words, we the people. It's not we the citizens. It's we the people. It's not we the states. It's not we the white male Protestants. It's not we the citizens. It's we the people. Aliens, even aliens whose presence in this country is unlawful, have long been recognized as persons guaranteed due process by the 14th Amendment, Filer versus Does, and Dehas versus Davis. This is just easy questions. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. The Declaration of Independence founded us on equality rather than ethnicity. It founded this country on liberty rather than race. The United States is a country founded on a creed, not a common heritage, ethnicity, or a ruling political religious elite. Our national identity is not defined in religious or ethnic terms. The very term white Christian nationalist is totally anathema to the constitutional structure. And these same people who like to wave little flags that says we the people, just go back to the very documents they're talking about. It's clear in the way these things are written. The white Christian nationalism is inherently an un-American concept. It's also, for people who are religious, at least true Christians, it's actually a blasphemous concept as well. Nor does gender define our national identity. Daniel Webster, one of the founders you don't hear much about, in 1850 wrote, "The Constitution is all this gives us a national character." Franklin Roosevelt, 1943, "The principle upon which this country was founded, and by which it has always been governed, is that Americanism is a matter of mind and heart. Americanism is not, and never was, a matter of race or ancestry. A good American is one who is loyal to this country and to our creed of liberty and democracy." George W. Bush, "America has never been united by blood or birth or soil. We are bound by ideals that move us beyond our backgrounds, lift us above our interests, and teach us what it means to be citizens." Barack Obama, "What binds this nation together is not the colors of our skin or the tenets of our faith or the origin of our names. What makes us exceptional, what makes us American, is our allegiance to an idea." Ronald Reagan, "Americans came from different lands, but they shared the same values, the same dreams." Bill Clinton, "We must be one as neighbors, fellow citizens, not separate camps, but family, white, black, Latino, all of us, no matter how different, who share basic American values and are willing to live by them." This is the issue for us. This is our point. We are the ones that hold true American values. We are the ones who are patriots. We are the ones. And we shouldn't be ceding that terminology to the other side, nor that rhetoric. Then there's, of course, the ones who still don't get it. Ann Coulter, "What made America America was a particular blend of Protestant religion and European civilization. What will unmake America is a deliberate attempt to poison that blend with a flood of immigrants with widely different values." Well, somehow Ann, who's this little Miss Smarty Pants, didn't seem to read the Declaration of Independence, nor the Constitution, nor the Fifth Amendment, nor the 14th Amendment, nor any other of the beginning documents of this country. She was on Raswame's Truth podcast, where he's interviewing Ann Coulter. And by the way, she just likes the negative attention anyway. I don't think anybody would call her a serious thinker. "I still would not have voted you because you're an Indian. There is a core national identity that is the identity of the WASP, and the core around which the nation's valued are formed is the WASP." And he kind of just sat there like a dumb shit when she was just directly insulting him to his face. It was a really amazing thing to watch. Okay, well, look, this is all this white Anglo-Saxon Protestant pride stuff. They have a flag and little slogans and all that stuff. This stuff is just anti-American. It's utterly un-American, or let's just call it death by WASP. That is not what this country is founded on, in the least. Let's just talk about the rule of law and judges. Judges are the umpires of our rights. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Okay. It's over 1,000 pages. Anybody needs a little light reading or, have some insomnia problems, you could probably pick this sucker up. What happened to Republicans' argument that presidents should have line item vetoes because of Christmas tree bills? They're the ones who always argue about all this waste and fraud was embedded in bills, so that we should give the president line item veto, which I think is inherently unconstitutional. But they don't seem to be talking about this in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. It was already mentioned before, no court may use appropriate funds to enforce a contempt citation for failure to comply with an injunction or temporary restraining order if no security was given when the injunction or order was issued. What they're trying to do, and what Trump tried to do with an executive order, is say you got to post a bond before you can file a lawsuit. Okay. When somebody violates the order, the judge can hold them in contempt with fines or jail. This requires anyone suing the government to pay a bond before the court can use its contempt power to enforce that. And this would make court orders issued before the law takes effect unenforceable. Frankly, I'm not sure that this bill would pass constitutional muster on itself. In other words, the court can come in and the Supreme Court and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, this little section here is section 70302 is just unconstitutional," although that kind of might be an interesting, dubious constitutional argument. But basically, if you're going to give the courts the power, you can't hobble it in this way. But this is something to be concerned of, and I hope the Senate will knock this one out. His Memorial Day speech attacking the judges, you know, the scum that spent the last years protected by the USA, hating judges who suffer from an ideology that's sick and very dangerous to our country. I will tell you that American history has shown that when presidents go against the courts, they have never done well with that. It's painful at the time, but overall, they do not do well in the least. New York courts, more than 170 court rulings against the Trump administration. It's where daddy's not happy about this. Donald Trump is musing in his brain. So this is where they come up with this kind of stuff. Let's just talk a little bit about the origin of the power of judges and what the framers intended. The Declaration of Independence, after those first great words about we hold these truths to be self-evident, etc., is really just an indictment of King George III. And it was indicting him for many things, not the least of which is he has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for the establishing judiciary powers, didn't create enough judges. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. The framers did not want this. They wanted an independent judiciary, one that could criticize and push back on both the executive and the legislative branches. The framers intended independent courts to be active in both defining and defending individual and minority rights. As James Madison wrote, independent tribunals of justice consider themselves the guardian of those rights. They will be an impenetrable bulwark against any assumption of power in the legislative or executive. His buddy, Alexander Hamilton, he was kind of a frenemy. Sometimes he was buddies, sometimes they were at each other's throats. The courts are the best guardians of rights because the court has no influence over either the sword or the purse and is beyond comparison the weakest of the three departments of power. Now, Aristotle used to spoke about the power of judges, and Madison took this idea up in the Federalist Papers. All new laws, though penned with the greatest technical skill and passed on the fullest and most mature deliberation, are more or less obscure and equivocal until their meaning was settled by a series of particular decisions and adjudications. That's what the purpose of the courts are. When you don't have an independent judiciary, you have what was in basically Judgment at Nuremberg, which is Stanley Kubrick's kind of classic work about what happens when you destroy an independent court system and independent judiciary. There, you know, when you talk about those nasty activist judges, stop judicial activism, there is one rule, which is the only people who complain about activist judges are the losers. Winners never complain that the judge was being an activist. Only the losers complain. Well, you might want to think about that. This attack on judges because somehow there's this activist judicial cabal trying to thwart the will of American people as expressed in Donald Trump is utterly absurd. You have Republican judges doing this. You have some Trump appointee judges ruling against him. They're just following constitutional law 101. It ain't that sophisticated. I will tell you that what's going on is two things. Generally, Trump loses these issues, and the administration actually is quietly following, in most cases, the judge's orders. So it's not like things are totally in constitutional crisis. They have not yet gone there all the way. They have in the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case in El Salvador dragging their feet, and they're getting called the task force. But most of these hearings people aren't paying attention to, and the administration actually is quietly following them. So we'll see as that process goes on. Again, an independent judiciary is the centerpiece of the rule of law. By the way, one other thing in the big, beautiful bill, there's a 10-year ban on state and local laws regulating artificial intelligence in political campaigns. That is pretty concerning because you're going to see a lot of this stuff come up where you're going to create candidates saying things they didn't say and that being used in political campaigns. It's going to be harder even to get the correct information out. All right. I'm going to go with the trumped up myth. And again, I don't want to take too much time because we have another great speaker today, I realize. This immigration stuff, it's an utter trumped up myth. I will begin the largest deportation program in American history, including millions of illegal immigrants who Joe Biden has deliberately encouraged to invade our country, starting with the most dangerous criminals and working with local police. Okay, first of all, it has always been a priority of every administration to deport criminal aliens. This is nothing new here. Now, under Biden, the country, there was an increase in certain what are called quasi-legal status aliens. This was temporary protected status, DACA children, asylum applicants, parole protection. But under the Biden administration, illegal crossings are down. Criminal aliens have always been a priority for deportation. These are people who are in the country without documentation who commit crimes, some of them very serious crimes, some of them not very serious crimes, but they've always been a deportation priority. Trump says he's working with local police. That's already been done for decades. It's called Code of Federal Regulation 287G. There are already cross-deputized ICE agents in every major jail in the country. What they do is they get on the ADENT system since 1996. They take down the biographical information, and then ICE can go get the people when they're in the county jail and bring them. That's how most of these folks end up for prosecution for reentry after deportation and eventual deportation from the United States. ICE isn't running around. They don't have the resources. They go in and just get them from the jails. On day one, I will launch the largest deportation programs of criminals in American history. Well, so far, Trump's second term shows that the same immigration enforcement incompetence that he had in his first term. This bluster, this going into churches and going into courtrooms and ICE, it's because they're actually incompetent at really enforcing immigration law. In the 2 weeks between Inauguration Day and February 2025, Trump deported 5,693 people. In November of 2024, Biden deported 48,970, averaging around 12,200 a week. I mean, Trump is utterly incompetent at doing the very thing that he's talked about doing. He's as incompetent as that as he is at actually building a border wall. Because, you know, if you want to do something like build a wall, you have to have this thing called consensus of the administration of the American people. There's no consensus. And he's incompetent at his actual enforcement of immigration. Trump remains 4 times behind what Joe Biden was. So if Joe Biden, who supposedly was senile, is doing that and Trump is just totally ineffective, well, it tells you a lot about Donald Trump. Here's some from Homeland Security numbers, some of the numbers that you can see. Bill Clinton was like the real overachiever of deportation in both of his terms. But Donald Trump is really low compared to Joe Biden in all categories. So the trumped up myth, border wall incompetence, about 450 miles of border wall were built under both Trump and Biden. There are some places where a border wall can be effective. Fiscal year 2022, the border wall was breached 4,101 times, or more than 11 times a day. You build a wall, people figure out a way to get around it. The Berlin Wall didn't work. A border wall doesn't work either. And by the way, this is a key point. More than 1/2 of the 11 million undocumented did not cross the border illegally. A border wall would make no difference. They came in under a visa into an airport or someplace, get into the country, a student visa or a tourist visa, and then they just stayed. Okay, a border wall would not affect them in the least. I don't like doing this immigration raids, but it's got to be done. You got to catch the little visual kind of joke there in terms of, we can embrace Trump's immigration policies, just make it retroactive to 1492. Any rate, I'm going to talk a little bit about Trump executive orders here. He wants to be the king of executive orders. I think he may have actually eclipsed Franklin Roosevelt's number. Just kind of repetitive. By the way, some of these orders are crazy stuff. He issued an executive order banning the use of paper straws in federal. I mean, paper straws. One, I mean, I don't think he likes them because they dissolve in one of his 12 Diet Cokes that he drinks every day. You got to wonder about a guy who drinks 12 Diet Cokes, what's going on there. I also have a theory that if you unravel the paper straws, you might see some of the hidden Epstein files that shows he was a guest on the island too many times. But okay, leaving that aside. Executive order, look, an executive order is a presidential directive to manage operations of the federal government. That's all it is. Sources of executive order power is probably Section 1, Clause 1 of the Constitution, Article 2. The executive power should be vested in the President of the United States of America. There's express or implied acts of Congress that delegate to the president some discretionary power, and that can be the origin of an executive order. Okay, this is how the constitutional basis. It's for the executive power, basically for the executive power to be set forth. It does not have any power beyond the scope of executive power. You can't legislate with it, for instance. Executive orders are subject to judicial review and overturned if they lack constitutional or statutory support, which is happening to them all the time. Although you may be happy to know that the paper straw memo is still, I think, executive policy. I don't think there's been any court case on that one. So in 2021, President Joe Biden issued 42 executive orders in the first 100 days of his presidency. Donald Trump surpassed issuing 63 executive orders in his first 22 days. As of the February, he's issued the second most executive orders in the first 100 days. Franklin Roosevelt issued 99 executive orders in his first 100 days. So I think Trump is still behind Franklin Roosevelt for executive orders in the first 100 days. Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Okay, what is DOGE? DOGE, by the way, has a mascot. I didn't realize that you could actually have a department with a mascot. It's that dog. That's kind of a spoof of the scene from Titanic. Look, presidents can't create agencies, but he can name pretty much any executive office function that he wants. What I would say, if you wanted to create the Department of Munchkinland Efficiency for the Wizard of Oz, you can do that if you're the president of the United States. It's just labeling something an agency, but technically an agency is created by Congress and can't be wiped out by an executive order. There's nothing per se unconstitutional about naming something an agency, even though it doesn't have the legal status of an agency. But a president cannot destroy an agency that Congress creates and appropriates money for. So you've got USAID, the Department of Education. I mean, that's even beyond an agency. He wants to try to eliminate an entire department created by acts of Congress. It's just blatantly unconstitutional. Okay. DOGE has no power to fire anyone. Maybe a president can. So Article 2 says the president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Court filings, Trump lawyers said Musk is not the head of DOGE. Then he goes on the State of the Union and says Elon Musk is the head of DOGE. Trump has a way of kind of undercutting his own lawyers and legal positions all the time. I'm going to finish with just a little discussion about constitutional theory and then give plenty of time for the next speaker and, of course, for any questions. But you may have heard this term, the unitary presidency theory. Okay. The United States government is a unitary executive. The president entirely controls the executive branch. The vesting clause, Article 2, the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. Now, there's unitary, confederal, federal. These are all different forms of government. Our government is not structured in a unitary manner, even though we have a unitary presidency. Now, to give an example, several states have what are called plural executives. Arizona is an example of that. Executive office, independent elected. So there's lieutenant governors, attorney general, comptroller, secretary of state. Arizona, for instance, has a secretary of state. It has an attorney general. It has a state treasurer. And of course, my favorite office that has a bit of executive power that the governor does not have is the state mine inspector. The point of that is we have a diffusion of executive power at the state level that doesn't exist at the federal level, okay? Why we have a state mine inspector, because it goes back to the 1890s when that was important, and why we still have it today, that's a whole different discussion. But it shows that we do not have a unitary executive, okay? Texas is another example. But there's this debate about whether it should be what's called a strong unitary versus a weak unitary. Person like Bill Barr was all big on the strong unitary theory, or as are a lot of people who are enabling Donald Trump. They may not like things that Donald Trump does, but they believe in this strong unitary executive, which I think is utterly unconstitutional. Strong unitary, well, there's the take care clause. Article 2 says the president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That is supposed to be a limit on the power of the presidency to affect laws Congress creates regardless of what the president wants. Creates a hierarchy, unified executive department, the president's direct control, versus weak unitary. Look, ultimately, all administrative power belongs to Congress rather than the president. The Senate must confirm all cabinet and sub-cabinet appointments. Okay, I'm going to skip through some of this. It's just different things. Okay, let me give a hypothetical here. And I like to use the jackalope. Do you remember that when we were kids? I remember my parents sending us out in the desert to go run around in campouts to look for jackalopes. Okay, it's this mythical animal that appeared on all kinds of postcards about Arizona, the jackalope. Okay. Well, let's say Congress passes a law. The EPA must protect the jackalope. Okay. And Donald Trump comes in and says, I hate the jackalope. The jackalope costs jobs. The jackalope is a terrible thing for our country. And there should be a question on the census, are you a jackalope? Okay. Well, what is the head of the Environmental Protection Agency to do? He's got an independent mandate from Congress to follow the Environmental Protection Act, even though his boss doesn't like it. Okay. What is that? How's that work out? Okay. Well, here you have Elon Musk. I hate the jackalope too. All right. Well, this happened in Trump's first term, but remember little Jeff Sessions? In many ways, I think he was a despicable little guy, but he did the right thing when he followed the law and he appointed Mueller to head the investigation. He was following the law. He was following attorney ethics. And this really got Donald Trump pissed off at Jeff Sessions because he had the conflict. Department of Justice will not be influenced by political considerations. Jeff, this is great, what everybody wants. So look into all corruption of the other side, including blah, 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 blah. Come on, Jeff, you can do it. The country is waiting. He didn't like Jeff Sessions doing what he was supposed to do. He also continued on some investigations against a couple of Republican congressmen because the law said that they should do it and they were guilty of corruption, et cetera. Trump didn't like that. Well, as you know, Jeff Sessions lost his job and he eventually gets Bill Barr in, who eventually pissed him off as well. But Bill Barr was this big guy pushing for the strong unitary executive theory, okay? Believes the president cannot by definition obstruct justice. I think that's an absurd position. Well, here you have a Supreme Court that came in and seemed to agree with that, with John Roberts writing an absurd opinion about presidential immunity that has absolutely nothing in the Constitution. I read through the entire Constitution about once a year, maybe twice a year. You can read it all day and you will never find anything about presidential immunity in the United States Constitution or in the documents creating the country. Many current supporters of a strong unitary executive did not so believe under President Obama. In fact, they spent all their time complaining about it. So that's something to think about. That's the kind of the underlying constitutional arguments that are floating around. And again, I think I can stop here. We could talk about prerogative power, etc. But I know you have another great speaker, and I don't know if you have a format that can take questions, but if there's any questions, I'd be glad to take those.
Thank you, Robert. That was wonderful.
Good.
We are on a little strange run of show today, and I do want to give Ellie some time,
Good.
but she has a hard stop time. So after that, I would love to open it for questions because I know people have questions.
I'll be here.
We've talked about and other things. So we'll do Ellie now and come back to you if that's okay.
Absolutely. Fine.
All right, folks. Ellie served as the lead labor organizer for the UFCW Local 99 before becoming Mayor Kate Gallego's aide and campaign finance director. She then worked as Congressman Greg Stanton's financial, political, and field director, and she's currently the political director for the Arizona Education Association. A Phoenix College and ASU graduate in justice studies and political science, Ellie has earned the following awards: ASU Outstanding Justice Studies alumna, Democratic National Committee member and elected officer of the Western Regional Caucus, Leading for Change Fellowship graduate, 40 Hispanic Leaders Under 40 Award, and the Emerge Arizona Program graduate. But most important to me is that Ellie is the mother of a beautiful, smart, precious, and adorable Valentina, who's almost 1 year old. Ellie.
Thank you, Janie. Mom is the best title that I have. I heard many women say that before, and I didn't think I really understood what it was. So for all you moms, fur moms out there, that is the best title that I hold. And Janie, she just turned 1. She just turned 1. She's, trying to walk and do all the things, but thank you everyone for having me. My name is Ellie Pérez-Pawloski. I also have an update, Janie. I now serve as the Senior Director for Public Affairs at the AEA. So now I oversee the government relations, the campaigns and election department, the communications department, and our professional development department. So it's great to be here with all of you. Thank you for Robert for that information ahead of my piece. I apologize for the time crunch. I thought I was going to be late, then I ended up being able to make it on time. But I will jump in. I'm about to drop some links in the chat just because I'm going to talk about a lot of things, but I want to make sure that you have it. So as part of my role, I get to work with government relations team here at AEA. And the AEA, for those who are new to labor world, is the Arizona Education Association. We represent over 22,000 educators in Arizona. And when we say educators, we mean everybody from your in-person, in-classroom instructor to everyone who helps make the building run, custodians, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, paraprofessionals, some front of the school staff. But we represent over 22,000, almost 23,000. I think we're about 60 members shy from 23,000. And we have grown significantly. We've grown about 25% in the last 2 years' time. Currently, our president, newly reelected, is President Marisol Garcia, the first Chicana to be elected in this position, former social studies 7th and 8th grade teacher. Vice President is Vice President Angela Philpott. She is from rural schools, and our current treasurer is Amber Gould, but our incoming treasurer, we just had elections, is Margaret Cheney, who is an educator from Tucson. So we are, it's the first time we've had all women and all women of color lead AEA. So it's a different time at AEA. We always say, right, it's not your mom's AEA. It's a whole different way. We are really embracing what it is to be a union. So as I said, we represent 22,000 educators, and we focus on working conditions, better pay, and making sure that educators are thriving and being able to live their best lives, right? Like our motto is that you should not be worried about paying your mortgage while you're teaching or you're educating. You should be worried about the safety and well-being of those students. And so that's where we come in as their union. So I dropped a couple links in the chat. This session has been a whirlwind. We are about to go into session again, right? As you know, right now the House and the Senate are on recess, I believe, until June 8th. Where they will come back, and it's believed that, based on the rumor mill that is the Capitol, if you've been down there, that there will be budget negotiations starting soon. Before we get into budget negotiations, I do want to talk about Prop 123. For many of you know what Prop 123 was. Prop 123 was passed about 10 years ago. It was essentially an agreement that a certain percentage, 6.9% to be exact, of the state land trust sales would go to benefit public education. There was a lot that went into this, but at the end, it was a bipartisan effort that passed at the ballot 10 years ago. It is set to sunset June 30th of this year. And it should be going to the voters for approval or a different version, a clean version, depending on what the legislature pulls out. Unfortunately, the 2024 election did not give us a tie in either chamber, so we are left with a majority Republican legislature, but we do have the governorship. So what that meant for Prop 123. It could go to the ballot one of three ways. The governor, in agreement with the House and Senate leadership, could call for a special session. They put something on the ballot for voters to vote this year or next year. That was option one. Right off the bat, we knew that wasn't going to be a possibility because Republicans were not interested in negotiating with Governor Hobbs, right? They were going to make this as difficult as possible for her in a year prior to the election. The other piece that it could go to the ballot is the majority party could refer something to the ballot as a ballot referral, an SCR or an HCR, House Concurrent Resolution, or a Senate Concurrent Resolution. Those do not need the governor's approval. A simple majority can put that on the ballot. If you recall the 2024 election, we had about 13 things on the ballot that the legislature had sent to the voters. And then the other way that it could go to the ballot is if citizens gathered signatures and sent it as an initiative. So at the beginning of this year, there was a couple bills introduced that were SCRs, HCRs, both House and Senate. One was a simple renewal introduced by Representative Gutierrez, a Democrat, which, as you know, didn't go anywhere. The other two were mirror bills that came from Senator Mesnard and Representative Matt Gress. If you recall, Matt Gress, he tried to pass this a couple years ago. This is his Pay Teachers More Act, which really should be is rob some teachers and then pay some teachers maybe act, is what it should be. So this essentially would have a very limited definition of what an educator is. It would exclude a lot of educators, and it would exclude our education support professionals. And the other piece is that they would want to codify ESA vouchers on this. So we've been doing a lot of legwork. You might have seen some billboards. Maybe if you're out in the rural areas, you're hearing some radio ads, but AEA has been pushing significantly along with other education supporters to keep this off the ballot. Right now, it seems like we've successfully stopped it for now. But as you know, nothing is dead in the Arizona State Legislature until sine die, and that is still a ways away. They have until June 30th to pass the budget. So that's where we are in Prop 123. And so moving forward, knowing that the deadline of June 30th is still there, we have to move into budget negotiations. So Arizona State Legislature has to do anything. The one thing they have to do before they close down the House or the Capitol for the year is they have to pass a budget by June 30th. The last couple of years, it seems like they just wait down to the wire, and they like to do this in June. So they'll be back in June, at the beginning of June, and we'll have budget negotiations. I put in the chat, AEA just released our budget priorities, and I put those in the chat. There's a link in there. It says learn about our AEA budget priorities, and it's a letter that we sent to the governor and the Arizona Democrats, just letting them know kind of where we are on these budget priorities. One of our biggest ones is to waive the aggregate expenditure limit. If you've been around the last couple of years in Arizona, the AEL, as we lovingly refer to it, is essentially a cap, an arbitrary cap put on schools, only public schools, where how I explain it is if you have $10 and you want to spend all $10, the AEL essentially caps you at only spending $8. So when schools want to spend more money to hire more folks or to fix buildings, they can't because they are capped by that AEL. Lifting the AEL or abolishing the AEL would essentially release the funds that schools do have. Some schools get criticism for holding back funds, but it is not the school's choice or the district's choice. It has got a lot to do with the AEL. So we're asking for the AEL to be waived or completely repealed, right? It does have to go to the voters to be repealed, so it would have to be introduced as a ballot referral. The other piece is reversing a K-5 literacy mandate. I can go really into depth about this, but it essentially is an unfunded mandate that puts more burdens on educators without any kind of support, and it doesn't take anything off their plate to continue this. Again, maintaining critical funding for our educators, maintaining the base level funding for our education, make sure that our poverty rate still is on. So that's a certain amount of money that goes to folks under a certain dollar amount per household. And then making sure we are asking for free and reduced lunch to be kind of universal for folks. There was a bill introduced this year that we are supporting and are asking the governor and the Democrats to really make sure that they are fighting for that. So those are some of our AEA priorities. Of course, eliminating vouchers is always at the top of it. As you know, this is a system that is completely unregulated. There's no accountability. And we believe that if you are taking taxpayer money, right, you should have some accountability. We saw a great example of what accountability could look like, right? According to the Republicans with the DDD stuff this year, they were asking parents of disabled children to show receipts. And if they are asking parents of disabled children to show receipts for government money, they should be asking ESA parents to also show receipts to be equal and put caps on that too. Let me see, what else did I put in here? The other thing is I did put in here a link to sign up for our AEA legislative update. Make sure that you sign up. We send a weekly update that tells you what's going on at the legislature, any bills that are affecting education and that are affecting educators in particular. We have a few bills that are still out on the docket that if you sign up for our ledge update, you'll get an alert once a week that says, here are the education bills that you should be following. And if we need you to help us by signing into RTS or sending a letter to your representative, that's where you'll find it out as well. The other way that you can support your local education union is to join AEA. I'll drop a link in the chat in a little bit on how to join and be an associate member. But the best way that you can show solidarity is joining us and then joining AEA events. I did put in 2 events that are coming up, a trivia night that we have for educators, which is a fundraising opportunity. And then I put in our general events. So if you ever have a question of what is the local school district or the local union in my area supporting, our AEA events page is always up to date. I do want to emphasize that AEA is particularly different than other education groups. We are a democratically elected organization that elected our 3 officers this year, and we represent members. So our job is solely to make sure that educators in Arizona have a better life, whether it's through wages, whether it's through working conditions, whether it's just basic dignity and respect at their workplace. We also focus on professional development. So we provide a lot of professional development for educators. We have an entire professional development department that has been set up for that. And Janie, am I missing anything? I know it's a lot to pack into a few minutes.
No, that's wonderful. And I love the links that you put in there. And I always make sure that my state senator and state reps are associate members because they, even though they're not educators, they get all of the information and the newsletters and legislative tips and everything from AEA. So we know that they can support education issues. So if you're not a member, an associate member of AEA, please consider doing that. It's really important to be up on all these insidious things that are happening at the state legislature and nationally against education. Thank you, Ellie, so much.
Thank you. I'm dropping the link for right now it's a PDF. But you can email it back to me, Janie, if you, or you share it with Dr. Heydrich, and then she can share it with me. It's a one-time, once-a-year fee. But as Dr. Heydrich said, yes, there's a lot, and it really does help really amplify that AEA represents educators, but also it shows the support from the community when we get associate members to join. So would love to have you join. And then I do want to comment, Robert said something earlier. I just recently became a citizen after being undocumented since the age of 4 in the United States. And Robert mentioned that undocumented immigrants don't want to vote. So I worked in elections from from 2012 to 2024. And 2024 was the first year that I got to vote in an election. So my career has been spent helping those who can vote. But he is right. Undocumented immigrants cannot vote. Undocumented immigrants per capita statistically are shown to have the least amount of crime in their areas. And as I sign off to this, I do want to say, as someone who's formerly undocumented who still has a mixed family, the message that I want to leave you is, 1, support your public schools and your public unions. But 2, there is nobody else coming to save this group of people. If you are waiting for someone to come save us, there is no one else. We are it. We will have to use every tool, every asset to our name to support our communities in whatever way they require. So that call might come in the form of donate to this organization, support this food pantry, right? Give someone a bed who's lost their home. Or the call may come to, please come stand in front of this bus who is deporting my mom. And I hope that when those calls come, you are able to answer them to the best of your ability. And remember that it only takes one person to make a difference. You could be the difference between saving a family that's undocumented or not, by offering them support, by connecting them to resources, by connecting them to a lawyer who is qualified and certified to deal with immigration court. So as you continue to learn about these issues and support this community, Dr. Heydrich has my information, and I'm happy to support in any of the immigration pieces as you would like. But I would like to ask you to please understand that there is no one else. You are our hope. That this is it. This is the the front lines of the battle, and you guys are standing there. So you gearing up and learning all this information is going to be really valuable. And so thank you all for your time.
Ellie, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us today. That was absolutely wonderful. And give Valentina a nice smooch.
I will.
From her Tijuana.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bob, I know this is on to you, but we have 15 minutes. If people have a question or a concern, the easiest is to go down to the bottom of your Zoom, and you'll see React. And if you click on that, there's a little bar that says raise hand. I just raised my hand, which means I go to the front here of the list, and then it's easy for Bob to have a speaking order of people. And it's harder to trace people in the chat. So if you have a question or a concern, or thank you, Bob, for being there and fighting on the front line. Whatever you want to say or ask, please raise your hand, and we have extra time. Melanie, of course.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Janie. I appreciate it so much. Thanks so much for such a wonderful talk. Ellie was just so eloquent on the immigration issue. And Bob, what can we do? We are the front line, and I know immigration attorneys, and everything's just kind of topsy-turvy. What can we do to help on the immigration issue?
Well, I thought she gave some very good ideas. Be present for people, and get them to good people. I would also kind of contact the ACLU Immigrant Rights Project. They have a list of things that people can be advised of what their rights are and what their rights are not. And so you can always just keep in touch with that and just try to document things. You know, if you look at the Joe Arpaio experience and Andrew Thomas experience, the taxpayer ended up paying millions of dollars for their really incompetence and stupidity when it came to many things, but certainly immigration issues and policies. One of my claims to fame is I actually wrote the bar complaint that got Andrew Thomas disbarred. And it was his attack on the judiciary. Oh, thanks. His attack on the judiciary and his trying to implement immigration policy, which really caused them both to have downfalls. Look, these people can cause tremendous pain, but eventually it takes them down with this stuff because it just gets to be a level of craziness. So one little note about, when a bar complaint is actually what's called a bar charge. We have duties to report malfeasance on lawyers, and then the bar usually has to go through a long investigative process. Andrew Thomas would violate the rules of ethics, and then he'd go around and call a press conference and tell you what he did. And then, so when I wrote this thing up, I said, well, he did this, and here's the transcript of the press conference or the newspaper article where he just bragged about doing exactly that. So it turned out to be, extensive to write, but, it was all right there to do. It was kind of interesting.
So tripped up by his own hubris. That's great.
Absolutely. And I got to tell you, I'm surprised both during the first Trump administration and this one that he hasn't risen up, that, he was some kind of precursor. My guess is he had a total mental breakdown and is crawling under some rock someplace. But I'm a bit surprised that he hasn't surfaced up in this later days, any rate. So that's about the best I think you can do for people. My friends who are working undocumented, I just tell them to be careful, be safe, and stay away from certain places where, ICE agents are going to be. So.
My son-in-law has a restaurant, a taqueria.
Mm.
And shortly after Trump was elected, he had an immigration officer come and speak to his staff so that they understood what their rights were.
Sure.
They have not had any problems. So that's the information, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Morgan.
Hi.
Again.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
one of my big concerns is all of the impoundment of granted funds for scientific research for National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health. Now I understand that this is illegal, but I was wondering what your sense of the likelihood of those being reversed might be, given all of the court cases and so on.
Well, I think there's definitely possibilities, but I think that that's a public relations nightmare in the making. And I think you can start making the direct things of, hey, we were right on the verge of discovering this cure, and yet this person's dying from this right now. And I think, this attack on Harvard is not going to go well for the administration.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to pull out all kinds of things. And, Harvard's actually taken a stand, which is good. Now, it's helpful to take a stand when you have, what, a $250 billion endowment yourself. So it does, kind of help them a little. But you're going after the premier university, one of the premier universities in the world.
But
I just don't see. Yeah.
It's widespread, across, many, many universities that grad students aren't going to be paid.
Yep.
That research trials are being stopped in the middle.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but I'm hoping that those can be reversed.
Yeah, but one, I think what has to happen is you have to have a democratically controlled legislature that can actually bring and do investigations and assert what is appropriate legislative power. One of the things that Donald Trump said about the big, beautiful bill when it wasn't passing is, Mike Johnson needs to do his job. Well, under the Constitution, his job is not to appease the President of the United States. It's to assert the prerogatives of the legislative branch. He clearly has not done his job under the Constitution. He's done his job under a minion in the Republican Party. But But look, we all find this important. I think it's also important for us to just point out things like, hey, people don't care about funding to Harvard. They don't care about medical research. But again, they do care when the prices at Walmart all of a sudden are going up. And those are the points we need to make out. When I talk about immigration law, I share the outrage about what's going on here, but I speak about it in terms of incompetence. He's not enforcing immigration law. That can have an effect. Nobody cares about the humanity of the way we're treating people, at least that crowd, or the ones we have to convince. But you convince people how incompetent he is and what a buffoon he is and ridicule, well, that's a more powerful message, I think. There are people like us who care about the due process rights of, Kilmar Obrego Garcia, but most people don't. But they will care about the fact that this is all incompetent, what's going on here.
Yeah, and I guess one of the problems with my concern about long-term research is that it's long-term. And the discoveries that won't be made will be affecting people who are in cancer wards, 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Well, look, that affects the people it affects. And that is a message that reaches the people it reaches. But those aren't the people we need. Look, again, I'm pretty hopeful. With a different candidate, a different process, Donald Trump would not have been president. So let's just not forget the fact that he doesn't have a majority of the country. He never has. And his approval ratings right now, what, 42%? My hope is they dip down to the 30%. Usually when a president's approval ratings go into 30%, that's when all the rats start leaving the ship. And you're already getting pushback in the Senate from Senate Republicans on deficit issues on this bill. And I'm just kind of seeing, by the way, Donald Trump has really never had a true legislative achievement that's all his own. His tax cut was a Paul Ryan thing. His judges were all Mitch McConnell. Those were those men's achievements, if you can call them that. Not Donald Trump's. He's never had a significant legislative win. So.
And as someone pointed out, he's never won an election. No, I'll have to think about that.
Well,
but I want to piggyback.
He did win the last election. We got him that, but he didn't win by a majority of the American votes.
That's right. No, there's something else about gender in there. I'll have to remember that. But I want to piggyback on a comment that Nelson made about the lawsuits. I mean, when they first started, there's so-and-so has a lawsuit. This is a lawsuit. Chris Mays had lawsuits. And then I got a little jaded and I thought, well, where are they all going? I mean, there must be hundreds of lawsuits, and they certainly reflect what I want undone or stopped. But what's happening with them all, and what branch decides?
Yeah, the New York Times is keeping tabs on them. Frankly, it's as a practicing lawyer, I can't keep track of them all. But they're going forward, and like I said, Trump is generally losing them all. When he gets a win, it's usually on some procedural issue, which doesn't give him a win on the merits. And they're generally being complied with, the court orders and things like that. So, the courts are still holding strong. Now, I wish we had a different Supreme Court, which would back up some of these great district court judges that we have a bit better. But even they seem to be coming along okay in some of the cases. So we'll just see how that plays out.
Any more questions for Bob? This is it. This is the horse's mouth. Sorry, Bob.
Okay. I trust me. By the way, some of the hate, I've been called way worse. Some of the hate email and voice messages that I get are really remarkable. It's a mentality. The ones that I find most, a lot of them are, blah, 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 blah. But the ones I find most fascinating are the ones that say, you're lying and you're lying. I often get that. And what that tells me is two things. One is there are people who don't have a frame of reference that they can even have an understanding of a civil political disagreement without implicating that you are evil. But I also find it interesting that I'm lying like I'm part of this secret deep state cabal that is foisting this lies. And I could initiate all of you, but then I'd probably have to kill you because I can't give you the decoder ring without something else, you know, if I told you all the secrets. So again, it's this mentality that's just strange.
And the opposition is tends to violence and vitriol, and that's why I like Adrian's comment. When
Yeah.
they go low, step on their necks. Well, Bob, thank you again for
Thank you,
being our
Bob.
guest today. You
My great
really
pleasure.
illuminated a lot of issues for us, and I appreciate that.
May I just also say, Linda here, thank you for your humor in this even. Everyone needs to laugh a little bit with all this seriousness, so thank you.
Happy warriors. Let's leave
And-
happy warriors.
Yes.
And I
Right.
want to remind everybody that today's session was recorded, so please access that and share it with your friends and your neighbors. Really important information today from Bob and from Ellie, and the links to converse more with Bob and get information from Ellie are great. So thank you so much. Join us on June 25th when we'll have another program that is illuminating. And please take our urging to resist. There are so many 1,000 entries into resistance that do not challenge your anxiety about being out front. So please resist, and we will see you June 25th. Thank you for joining us.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.